Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the Veg Grower Podcast live stream. Hope you're all well. Hope you're all having a great weekend and all that jazz. You will notice I'm not in the usual shed tonight. Hopefully you can hear me fine. Hopefully the picture's coming through nice and clear as well. I've decided to do this in the office tonight just because that bad storm is coming through and I didn't want to get a power cut or anything like that. So hopefully you can tolerate this with a night. I don't normally like doing this in here because the setting's not quite right. It doesn't feel like it's quite a garden shed. But I mean, we do have a spade here. That's about it, really, isn't it? How are we all? Hope you are all well. So tonight we are going to be discussing what is the compost that you buy in, and this is a topic I think that is quite fitting at the moment. But before we get into that, let's see if anybody is out there. And first of all, we've got Turbo Stream out there saying, "Good evening, Veg Podcasters. Wet and very windy here in Birmingham. It's very wet and very windy here in Littlehampton as well." Ballycillian is out there saying, "Hi from a stormy Belfast. Hello to you. Hope you are well." We have got Stuart Jackson. "Evening, Richard and the Veg Army from a wet and windy Wiltshire." It's good to hear that wet and windy seems to be the running theme. Rob's a Love and Garden. "Good evening." Oh, he goes on to say he's on time tonight. Lovely to see you. Adrian is, of course, out there saying hello to me and hello to all. Hello to you. We have got Rebecca is out there saying, "Hello, lovely people. Hope you've had a good week." Hello to you. Kate is, of course, out there. "Good evening, Veg Army from a very blustery Nottingham." Yeah, Nottingham. The camera's in the way slightly there. Hope you are well. Anna Jones is out there saying, "Evening, gardeners. Good evening to you." Rob's Allotment Garden couldn't have been better, but could have been better, but that's life. Hope you're okay, buddy. David Williams, "Hi all. Long time no see." Hello to you. Hope you are well. Just been catching up on I've not seen a live in quite a while. I know it's busy time of year, isn't it? Hargrave Gas is out there saying, "Evening all. Hope you've all had a good week. The wind is picking up here. Storm Isha or Aisha, however it's pronounced, is incoming." Anna Jones says, "Storm not that bad in the northeast yet. It's just very windy here. It's a bit worrying." Gary is out there saying hello to everyone. Good evening to you. Jenny is out there. "Hello, everyone. Good evening to you." Scott is there saying, "Evening all. Good evening to you." My dad is out there. "Good windy evening to you." Good evening to you. Stuart Jackson says, "It's like the good old days back in the office." Yes, but when I was in the office originally, I made it look like I was in a shed, didn't I? And that's something I want to try and replicate. If this works tonight, I'm not sure how the signal is going to work out, but if this works better on the signal tonight, then I might look at building a shed back inside this office again, just because it's fun, isn't it? Ian is out there saying, "Hello, Richard and all. Good evening to you." Jenny is there. Oh, I've said hello to Jenny. Chili Kate is out. "Hi, everyone. Just a blown around our dog walk." Indeed, a lot of wind going around. Ian says, "I hope everyone's greenhouse gets through the wind." Of course. Okay. Of course, yeah. I mean, this wind is going to be a bit of a problem, isn't it? I'm hoping it's not going to be too bad for everybody or any of us. Let's keep fingers crossed. It's always scary when we get these weather warnings. I'm always worried the weather is going to damage our greenhouses, damage trees, bring trees down on top of stuff. Who knows what could happen? Fingers crossed. If you do get any damage, please do feel free to share it in our Facebook group or through sending me pictures or anything like that. Now, tonight, as I said, I want to talk about what composts you buy in. This is a subject that we've had we've come to and from, isn't it? Compost is something that we always come and discuss from time to time. But at the moment, we are obviously heading for peat to be banned. We spoke last week about the quality of the compost we're buying in not being that great, but there's also quite a collection of different composts that are used for different things. And I want to find out what you use. So we'll get into that in just a moment. First of all, the fisherman is out there. Well done on 1,000 YouTube subs. Thank you very much. It's much appreciated. And every one of you helps me get closer to that level or build the channel up, of course. I know I don't focus much on YouTube. I focus more on the podcast, but it's always good to see it grow at the same time. At this point, don't forget to give us a like. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up and follow, subscribe, and click the notifications so you know when we go live. If I say that early enough, it helps the algorithms push the content out a bit more. Andrew Norris says, hello, one and all. Hello, all. -4 here in Croatia. Nature needs it, but I fear for my fruit trees. I know how you feel, buddy. I know how you feel. Turbo Stream says, these storms are the reason I don't want a greenhouse. I know, yeah, it does put you off, but then you've got to remember how much better or how much nicer it is when things grow when you have a greenhouse as well. It's a toss-up, isn't it? It is a bit of a toss-up. Chili Kate says, yesterday we found a Dalek lid we lost a few months ago in a storm. It was about 4 plots away. I've got a Dalek compost bin on my allotment at the moment that I don't know whose it is. This happens quite often. Every time we get a storm, I end up with Dalek compost bins on my allotment, but they're missing the lid and the thing on the bottom where you get in to get the compost out. It's always missing that, so it's always nice to get this extra, shall we say, compost bin, of course, but it's missing parts, and I always wait for somebody to come and collect it. They never do. They never do. Turbo Stream says, I've decided this will be the last year I buy cheap compost. It's mostly rubbish. This is something that I do want to get into as well. And David Williams says, much rather repair a greenhouse than not have one. So let's get into this compost subject, shall we? Now, you sent me a mission last week, which is probably a good way to start this conversation off. And that was to go into a garden centre and see what types of compost they sell. And I've got that for you. So let's watch that and then we'll come back and chat.
Right guys, so here I am. I'm in my kitchen at the moment, and this week's mission was to go into a garden centre to try and see all the different types of compost that they sell. I did go into a garden centre. I wasn't allowed to take a video, but I did take pictures. Now, the first place I went to was where they sell queer compost, because I was after some queer compost. I know a lot of people are not fans of queer compost, but I have had good results in the past with queer compost. So for me, I'm moving more into queer based compost, especially when it comes to growing indoors. With the reduction in peat based composts, I'm finding I'm getting a lot of peat or compost flies in my compost because it's a lot of green manure compost, whereas the coir compost indoors, certainly in this kitchen, just seems to make it a little bit better, or should reduce the compost flies anyway. So I went there. What was interesting is they don't seem to be selling as much coir compost as they have done in the past. All I could see there was the seed and sowing compost, which I do actually use. I bought some of that last year, coir based. But in the past, what I've actually used for peat based seed and cutting compost is this stuff. And I bought a few bags of this a while ago. It served me well. It's lasted a long time. But of course, it's going to be phased out, so I'm trying to get ahead of the problem. Now, when it comes to, that's what I use for seed sowing, as I said, seed and cutting compost, as it says on the label. But when we come to take our seeds to the next stage, we pot them up into something a little bit bigger, into a bigger pot, give them a bit more space, of course. I would then generally just move on to multi-purpose compost. Just because you end up with so many different types of compost if you are not careful. And again, that served me well in the past. It's just the green manure based compost, or the green waste I should say, sorry, is causing a lot of flies in the kitchen. Now I have used the John Innes number 2, then up to number 3 and number 4 as a alternative in the past, but it just got a little bit complicated. We ended up with way too much compost, so I'm just sticking now with seed compost and multi-purpose compost as a general rule. But then we do get a few specialist composts, of course, and what I saw there was obviously the cactus composts, there's orchid composts, there was citrus composts, all of which I have used in the past. And of course, let's not forget the good old ericaceous compost, which are particularly important if you are growing blueberries, because that's the soil, the compost that they really need. So yeah, those are the types of compost I use, and that is the types of compost that I saw in the garden centre that I popped into. So let me know in the comments, what type of composts do you use and why?
Yes, so seed sowing compost is what I usually use for seeds when I start them off. I've done that for years. The light friable compost I just find really does help the seed break through the soil, makes it easy for them to get their roots through and just get going. And that, but usually seed sowing compost doesn't have many nutrients added to it at all. It's a very sort of poor soil, I guess you could say, which is great for seed sowing, but not when the plant gets growing on. So when it grows on, as I said, I used to use the Jack Innes number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 to get my plants bigger and bigger, but you end up with so much different types of compost. So I just went back to just using plain old multi-purpose compost. Apart from any specialist composts, of course, just seed sowing compost, multi-purpose compost as for most of my plants. The trouble I've got recently is these flies, as I've said there. I buy my multi-purpose compost. The cheapest place I found to buy it from was the range. You get 4 bags for £10. It's actually pretty decent stuff. It smells really nice. It does really well outside. I've just noticed I'm getting a lot of flies from it. So I'm looking at using coir compost as multi-purpose compost just for when my plants are in the kitchen. But let's see what you are saying in the comments now. So where were we? Where was the last one there? So Jenny says, I've designed a wooden cane frame to go over my zippy polytunnels to help with the wind. Also a living windbreak of Jerusalem artichokes. Must get them ordered. Keep the Jerusalem artichokes in a confined space or in a pot or something, because they can take over. One bit of advice I have there. Digwell has joined. He says, editing like mad, just finished you. Got a lovely video coming up from Digwell a little bit later on, actually. A bit of a laugh and a joke, but there's a serious point to it at the same time. Look forward to seeing that. Turbo Stream says, I bought John Innes last year, seed, and number 2, not with the added John Innes. The added John Innes, I always think, is a bit of a salesing technique. It's trying to say add stuff. My understanding with John Innes is that it was a grade of the soil. So number 1 was meant to be for seeds and younger plants. Number 2 for growing on, still for young plants. Number 3 for bigger, and then 4 for potting something. That was my understanding. It may have changed a bit, but that was always how I understood John Innes to work. Graham Arnold has joined, says, evening all, hope everyone is well. Anybody who's joining, wondering why I'm not in this shed, it's just because I think the weather is going to be so bad tonight that we're going to get no end of problems. Hopefully the audio and the visuals are much better tonight from here. David Williams says, I've always bought compost from Lidl, and although it's not the smoothest, it's done its job. The last 2 years, though, I've struggled with it. There has definitely been, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of problems with compost, which is something we found last year, when there were certain brands. I was buying the bags of compost, and they were absolutely fine for me, but some of you guys were bought it, and there was bits of stone, there was bits of credit cards, all in with that compost that you were buying. These were from reputable brands as well. You're paying a lot of money. So it was the quality control just wasn't quite right for some of these companies. And it was all over the place. What else have we got? Turbo Stream says, my kitchen has compost flies too from the cheap LD compost. I don't think it's necessarily just the cheap LD compost. I think it's all the green waste compost is now going to get these compost flies in them because it's their ideal ground. It's going to happen when we start using green waste compost. It's one of the disadvantages of doing away with peat. Kate says, I like Sylvia grow peat free last year. New Horizon was god awful. I think Kate shared some pictures last year of the New Horizon. It was pretty bad, the stuff that she had. But as I said, I bought the same compost and it was perfectly fine. It's just the quality control across the whole load, all the batches just aren't there yet. Richard Golden has joined and says, hello all, good evening to you. Bethan's Kitchen Garden says, evening all, sorry I'm late, I was playing tennis on the Wii with my daughter. Who won? Important question, who won? Ian, were you competitive as well? As it just reminded me of a conversation I had this week. Ian says, I can't remember what year we had the big storm, 1987 if I'm not mistaken, but I went under 2 trees and a power cable to get to work as a nurseryman. The commercial greenhouse was fine, but the polytunnel was bent over. 1987, I remember it very, very well because I had the day of school. Graham Arnold says, has anyone tried Jack's Magic this year? I haven't tried it this year. I've used it in the past and I've always found it to be a pretty good compost. However, I think it was Jack's Magic. I saw people sharing photos from B&Q on their website. They're selling it for £50 a bag or something ridiculous like that. £48.96 a bag. Absolutely ridiculous price, I thought. I'm hoping it was a mistake because I can't see anybody paying nearly £50 for a bag of compost. But what do you think? Buddy Cillian says, clover seed and module compost are my beds topped up, and my beds topped up with homemade compost. Yes, I did want to bring up homemade compost at some point because, again, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking our homemade compost is the same as the stuff that we get put in a bag, and it's not. It's not. It's more a soil conditioner. You add it on top of the soil to improve the soil. And again, my homemade compost, I don't really want my homemade compost come indoors. It's probably full of weeds as well, so I don't like to use it indoors. But yeah, homemade compost, good point. Jenny says, I use natural grower. It's not cheap, but it's 100% peat-free and organic. Plus, it's produced down the road from me, so it has a small footprint. I have not used peat for years. I won't touch it. I have to admit, I've gone peat-free, and I'm with you on that. But I will say, the price does have a big factor in what compost we buy. I do think price is I'll throw that out to you. How much would you be prepared to pay for a bag of compost on average? Let me know in the comments. Jenny says, I recharge old compost with natural grower feed, nettles and comfrey. I may need to buy some this year with new garden and new plot, but they'll always be organic and peat-free. Totally agree. Scott says, I normally use Jack's Magic. I think it's reduced peat, but not peat-free. I think you could be right. Ian says, I've used Jack's Magic. It's peat-based. I find it's okay. Excellent stuff. Highgrave Gas says, I have Jack's Magic. It's my go-to reduced peat compost. New recipe. It's not as good as it used to be, but still my favourite. Indeed, indeed. Stuart Jackson is... I buy seed and cutting compost, Koya and Hilliard's peat-free multi-purpose compost. I read to buy when on offer, then store it. Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly every month I go to the range and buy 4 bags of air compost and keep that stacked up down the bottom of my garden, ready for when I need it. Got quite a bit at the moment, but as I said with the compost flies, I can't use it indoors, so I may stop using it so much indoors. What else have we got? Jenny says, I do use organic Koya to help bulk up my compost. Now, Koya is an interesting compost. I've spoken to the people at Cocoa and Koya, and that's the Koya compost I like to use. I've had a lot of good luck with that particular compost, Cocoa and Koya, or that particular brand, I should say. Wilco's did one as well when it was open. Obviously, that's gone. Wilco's one was nowhere near as good as Cocoa and Koya. But Koya compost, there's a lot of people who let me get my words out, dispute how good it actually is. From my own discovery, I have found it to be pretty good. I have found it holds on to moisture, but it looks dry on top. You do have to add extra nutrients. The cocoa and coir one does have it already added in. But then there are transportation. Again, the people at cocoa and coir tell me that they keep their transportation down to a minimum through buying it in bulk and shipping it over, etc., etc. It comes from India, if I'm not mistaken. So there is a lot of issues with coir compost on both sides of the argument. What is the truth? It's always one of those that, like so much with this peat debate, there's a lot of different sides of the argument. Again, I've got an interesting video coming up with that very thing. Turbo Stream says the John Innes I bought was called Grow More from a local independent nursery, about £9 a bag, I think. Chances are John Innes has his own brand of compost. So it's probably the company called Grow More is probably just adding John Innes as a bit of a marketing ploy, I find. I might be speaking out of turn there. It's just my understanding with it. Andrew says, I use organic compost from what I've collected through the year. I never buy it here, but for feed I use nettle tea of vegetables and mallow tea of fruits. Interesting. Bethan's Kitchen and Garden says, I brought some OHS Sylvia Grow this year, and so far it seems really good. No big lumps, and it's a really good texture. It's meant to be consistent too. £8 for 40 litres, so not cheap, but we'll buy it again. See, to me, £8 for 40 litres isn't too bad. Not ideal, but I don't think it's too bad this day and age. As I said, £50 for a bag of compost. I think that is ridiculous, according to B&Q's website. Digwell says, bad weather tonight, bad enough last night. Horizontal rain woke me up. It was a bit bad last night, wasn't it? Graham Arnold says, oh, that's to Rob. I used it last year and thought it was a very damp compost. Not sure what they're talking about. Chili Cat says, we use the same Growshaw seed compost as you showed in the clip, and the Growshaw young plant compost to follow on. I know that they contain peat, but until peat-free is reliable, it's a toss-up. This is where I definitely find the coir compost is great for seeds because it is low in nutrients and it is easy for the seeds to go through. But again, I want to know what you guys use and what you find out. The Growshaw has done me really well for many, many years. I bought about 5 bags about 3-4 years ago, just kept to one side, and I've only just finished using them up. Ian Beddoes has joined. He says, hello everybody, I just buy the cheapest I can find. Well, what is the cheapest bag that you can find, and how much are you prepared to pay for compost? Bethan says, I thought if you watered from below and the surface of the compost doesn't get wet, then you won't get fruit flies. Don't know on that. I don't know on that. What I've done is I've actually got a carnivorous plant now to try and tackle the fruit flies, but I don't know. I don't know about that. But be a good experiment. Actually, I'll try that one day. Tanya Jobs has joined. Says, hi guys, actually get to see you all in real time. Tanya, of course, is a long distance lorry driver who pops up every now and then. Lovely to see you. Thanks so much. Are you traveling at the moment, or are you at home? We're discussing what composts do you buy in tonight. So let us know what composts you buy. Anna Jones says, clover for peat and Miracle Grow peat free. I used to use Jack's Magic, but variable from batch to batch now. This is a common thing. The variability of the batch to batch is becoming a bit of a problem. Something we do need to tackle. Chili Kate says, not bought multi-purpose compost since we've had the allotment. Things either go straight in the plot or in pots using soil from the allotment. I buy spent mushroom compost as a mulch. Mushroom compost, that's one I didn't even think of. It's one I can't touch, obviously, because mushroom allergies, so I don't touch it. But it's a lot of people say good things about mushroom compost. Bethan says, I'm not too competitive with her. If I'm playing against my husband, I do get a little bit competitive. I bring up the competitiveness because if you heard the the conversation I had with the DJ OJ Borge on Radio 2 the other night, that was something that came up. If you haven't heard it, it is in the Facebook group and in the Instagram and TikTok. I will be putting it on the podcast tomorrow as well. If you haven't heard my chat on Radio 2, it was a lot of fun. We'll get into that in just a moment. Kate says, I'm waiting to receive my chili seeds. What compost is best for those? Again, I find for seeds, seed compost is best. And then as we get on, best compost for chili seeds. I reckon Koya will actually do quite well. Or multi-purpose. There are composts, actually, I've noticed a lot of composts are saying they're dedicated for vegetables. Again, at £12 a bag, I thought it was a little bit expensive, so I avoided those. But yeah, chili seeds, chili is the best, or seed compost for seeds, and then probably Koya. If people say it dries out as much as they claim, then that's probably good for chili seeds. Bethan says, this is bed video quality you've had for ages, Richard. I can see what you look like. You know, I am thinking of moving the shed back into this this area and using our home internet once again. I was just discussing it with the wife because it does seem less problematic. Yeah. Ian says, do you make your own compost, Andrew? Does anyone see Clem Pack compost base to make your own compost, as I used to get it in the 80s? Not heard of Clem Pack, but we'll throw that out there and see if anybody says it. So I asked, how much are you prepared to pay, or how much do you pay? Clover, 80-litre bag, £6. That's actually a really good price, isn't it? Graham Arnold, I think £8 is plenty for 50 litres of compost. Digwell says, America has it right. They call it bagged compost, potting compost, to avoid confusion with homemade compost that's applied to beds. Yes, that's what I was saying earlier. Potting compost and homemade compost are two very different things. Idaho Gone Girl has joined. Hello, everybody, she says. Tanya Dobbs says, I buy Mother Earth. All right, but keeping my eye on peat-free results that everyone is trying. Mother Earth, how much is Mother Earth? I think I've seen that, and it can be quite expensive. I think this is the biggest issue that I have. I don't want to spend a fortune on compost because I need so much of it. I do use a lot of it. Trust me, I do use a lot. Real Co's are still trading online, says Ian. I have seen that, and they're also selling some of their items in the range as well. Used to be good for compost, I've got to say, actually. What else? Anna Jones says, I make my own seed compost by blitzing any cheap multi-purpose compost in an old food mixer. It makes it really fine. It makes a really fine compost. It's great stuff. Yeah, I've not had any experience with that myself. I have heard people are doing that, mixing up their own compost, chopping it up through, running it through a sieve as well. David Williams says, Koya hardly has a small footprint, though. Koya hardly has a small footprint. What do you mean by that? Sorry, I'm not sure what you mean by footprint. I have not bought any compost for 2 years now. I bought 3 pallet load to make sure I had some when peat was stopped. A lot of people have done that, and I have heard a lot of people doing it. I think it's a good idea, I've got to say. But peat is going to be stopped, and I think it's right that we find the best out now. And the good thing is we can talk about what we find the best compost now that peat is going through. Graham says, was thinking of trying the Q4 compost. Has anyone tried that before? I haven't tried the Q4 compost myself, but Q4 has had a lot of great raving results. Their feeds and fertilizers are very good, so should be okay. Jenny says, I use Koya for seeds. I add it to peat-free compost to bulk it up and open it up a little. It stops the crust forming on the top and helps the roots. Yeah, I do think it's got a lot of good things going for it, Koya compost, from my experience. I know there's a lot of debate on it. David Williams says, never shop via Facebook again. Funny thing is, I knew deep down I was getting conned. Too cheap to be true. It's always the way, isn't it? Too cheap to be true. The fisherman says, back in the day, people didn't use bagged compost and grew plenty. My granddad said it's a con to get us to part with the money. He never bought a bag. Funny enough, this is something I've been trying to do a bit of research during the World War II era, for example. What did people use then? What did they use for sea trays? What did they use back then? This is all questions that I am researching, and it has got me thinking. Why do we have to buy in compost? What is so special about it? The exception being, of course, when we come into some of the specialist composts. Ericaceous compost is a good example. Ericaceous, obviously, for our acidic loving plants such as blueberries, rhododendrons, and a few of the others. I may have got that the second one wrong, but definitely blueberries. They love ericaceous compost, and it does them well. Good. Then, of course, there's citrus compost, orchid compost, there's cacti compost. And I think these are just different mixes. So the cacti compost probably has a bit more sand mixed into it as opposed to multi-purpose compost. But the clue is in the name. Multi-purpose is there for a multi-purpose use of things. What else have we got? Turbo Stream says, you see bags of topsoil. I wonder if that's any good for potting on. I really want to avoid compost flies as I propagate indoors. So topsoil is generally just soil. It's just dug up out of the building sites and things when they need to get rid of it. So probably would have less compost flies, but it's got no real nutrients in it. Is my only concern. No real nutrients for growing the plants. David Williams says, it's coconut hair, if I might. Koya, yes, Koya is coconut hair, or the outer sheath of coconut. It's peeled off, compost. I don't know what they do to it. I don't know what they do to it, but it comes in a nice little block, decompressed, which is nice and easy to transport, which is what I used to like when they sold it in Wilco's. You could buy it, you could take it back to the car quite easily, and then you rehydrate it, and it's good to go. Johnniness is a concept. It's a formula, media, and fertilizers to suit various growing stages. A bit like the recipe for making bread. It's just a formula. That's exactly what I thought. When they say it's got added Johnniness, it's a formula. Johnniness is a formula. Thank you. That's what it worded it better than what I could think. Jenny says, I always had carnivorous plants near my seedlings to help with fruit flies, etc. I hope it works for you. I hope so. I've had carnivorous plants in the past. I do think that they are a lot of fun. Gary says, I love the carnivorous plant solution. Am I that far back in the comments? Crikey. I'm going to have to skip a load. Lots of comments coming in, as we see. So I'm going to have to skip a load and sort of catch up. Turbo Stream says, the best results I've had was the outdoor seabed. This is probably the World War II method. No compost needed. Yeah, could well be true. Probably is the truth. Probably didn't have greenhouses and things like, or heated and things like that. They probably did do an outdoor seed bed. So that probably is how they did grow things during World War II. Jenny says, I will reuse coir from pricking out seeds, etc. I just let it dry out and reuse, which I found stops any fungus, etc. that may be there. Yeah. Again, my old compost, I just throw into the compost bin, or if it's in a big block, I'll throw it in with the chickens, and they'll dig into it like that and spread it all over the place. Stuart Jackson says, I have looked at good quality topsoil. It's about £100 per metric ton, great for raised beds. Yeah, topsoil, builds it up. I just think it's a bit low in nutrients, my understanding, but it's good for building up your soil levels, I guess. So, yeah. Ian Bennett says, just looked, cheapest at cash and carry is £3.44 plus tax for a 50 litre bag. I can't work out the tax off the top of my head, but that's, let's say, £4 for a 50 litre bag. That's not bad. Not quite as good as I get at the range, though. 4 bags for £10. I think they're 40 litre bags. That's £2.50 a bag. I think that does seem to be the cheapest. Idaho says, topsoil here is the dirt they scrape off to level the top of a new building site. subdivision, etc. Not great, full of weed seeds, stones, etc. That's my understanding of topsoil as well. Whether it's different over here, but it is the top that they would remove. Ian says loam is better than topsoil as it should be sterilised, so bug and weed free. Interesting stuff indeed. Rob's Allotment Garden says the only seeds my dad sowed in the house was tomato. Yeah, I mean these are the questions I wish I asked my granddad when he was still around. Actually, how was it done? The Turbo Extreme says that's what I'm after. Loam-based compost. There must be a brand that available to the amateur gardener. I don't know if it's loam-based, but I certainly know the range sell topsoil as well. So it might be worth going to them. Right, I tell you what, let's go to Digwell's video on this very subject. It's quite a long one, but it's all about this peat-based conversation that we seem to be going down. Let's have a look at this and see what he has to say.
I'm here today at the climate protests in London. Let me see if I can find someone to chat with. Excuse me, sir, what's your name?
Tarquin Merriweather.
Would you mind coming and have a sit down for a minute and have a chat with me?
I'd love to, I'm tired.
Tell me, Tarquin, why are you here today?
Well, the use of peat. All those people using peat in their compost.
Well, why? Why are you protesting?
Well, digging all that peat up, it releases carbon dioxide, doesn't it? And endangers the wildlife and it ruins all the archaeological sites.
Do you know how much peat actually covers the UK?
Well, no, but can't be that much, can it?
Well, the UK is about 25 million hectares and peatland makes up 3 million, so it's about an eighth. 41% of that is semi-natural still, but it's been affected by human activities such as drainage and burn management and livestock grazing and peat for fuel. 16% is covered by woodland, the majority of which is drained, so it's no longer peat really, is it? 15% is agricultural, cropland, grassland, mainly in the lowland regions of the UK, like the Fens and the Norfolk Broads. Manchester mosses is one of them. Oh, and the Somerset Levels ain't too far from me. Industrial peat for horticulture uses 0.15% of the UK peatland area, and most of that is on lowland raised bogs.
Well, that's not a lot, is it? But all that CO2's been released.
So do you think that every single bit of peatland in the UK is going to be dug up and release its CO2? The peat used for growing media makes up 0.12% of UK's CO2 emissions. That's 3 2,500ths as a fraction. And this is already falling. It's dropped considerably since 2020. And horticulture is the only industry being targeted to achieve zero emissions. And don't forget that the peat used in horticulture is used to grow plants. And plants help to bring down the CO2.
Yeah, but the peatland's gone forever.
You need to get your facts right before you start protesting. Peatland grows back at 2 millimetres a year. The peatlands in Canada, which supply nearly all of North America, are growing back 20% faster than they're harvested.
Well, okay then. What about the damage to wildlife?
Well, yeah, the wildlife quoted in most of the reports is from pristine bogs. Pristine bogs are not used for peat extraction. Most of them are sites of special scientific interest. The nightjar, the great heath butterfly, the bog bush cricket and the mire pill beetle. Well, the nightjar is a heathland bird. It only lives where it does because the peat bogs have already been excavated. Yeah, the butterfly does live in wet areas, and it will only increase once the peat extraction sites are re-wetted. The cricket is a dry heathland animal again, and it benefits from the gaps between the peat bogs. And the pill beetle, well, that only occurs in 3 places in the UK, and they're all in South Yorkshire.
Oh, you're confusing me now with all your facts.
So is that not what the people who are opposed to peat have already done to you?
Right, and all right. So what about all the historical, all the archaeological digs they're digging up and ruining?
The archaeological argument is irrelevant. They reckon only 2% of sites have been damaged by digging up peat, and they wouldn't know the sites were there if they hadn't dug for the peat in the first place. All that archaeology is lying beneath us and we don't even know it's there.
So why can't we use cocoa coir and other compost?
Importing coir and other materials from abroad? Virtue signalling at its worst. Ecological, economical madness. Most of the coir from abroad has a very, very high salt content, and this needs to be washed in fresh water. a precious commodity in the places where the coir comes from. They can't afford to lose their fresh water to satisfy our coir needs. And do you know what they used to use the coir for before it was shipped to the UK? They used to put it round the trees. They used to mulch the ground with it, and now the soils over there are becoming denuded and barren. None of the viable substitutes hold water very well, the wood chips and the barks. You have to water more, the water washes out. Water washes out, takes the fertiliser with it. You have to add more fertiliser. Fertiliser washes into the water courses. Well, we don't want that, do we? And conversely, the other type of materials being used, the green waste, the digestates, they hold too much water. And the plants suffer, the roots get damaged, lack of oxygen, and so on. To quote Pippa Greenwood, the pest and disease expert, she said she had huge amounts of blight and grey mould on her tomatoes as a result of increased humidity with the non-peat based composts. And highly professional commercial growers report massive losses with the plants compared to those grown in peat. Tarquin, come back, I'm finished. Well, there you are then. Some people just don't want to listen. Okay, guys, just a little light-hearted look at the peat fiasco, really. But every response I made was from sources who have no interest whatsoever in promoting peat use in horticulture. They're all from like scholarly articles and things like that. Whereas the ones Tarquin was putting across are all from people who don't want to use peat. The peat consultation, was it last year? It was very one-sided in that the questions were all about how to go about the peat ban, not whether people wanted to carry on with peat in whatever form. This led to frustration amongst many as they had to select an answer they did not want to select in any way, shape or form, and any comment they wanted to make could only be added as free text in some sections. Hence NGOs like RHS, RSPB, WWF, Local Wildlife Trust, Woodland Trust, bit of irony there, they had a big say, where those opposed to the ban or wanting a different solution were either ignored or did not submit a response. One definite response to this was, well, you had your chance but did not act, hence the consultation. But the comeback to that was, well, peat usage is down by 17% voluntarily from 2020 and still falling. And on light of this, many say, why not let the big box stores and the garden centres play green, but allow a choice of peat to those who want to use it? The Horticultural Trade Association reports on how UK tree targets may be lost due to bad compost. They reckon £1.6 billion worth of trees and plants destined to help the green agendas, having to use peat-free compost may lead to losses of up to 85% from UK growers, either from dieback or the trade cutting back on their losses and not filling their quotas or even closing down altogether, and the increased nutrient cost and plant care cost. Oh, dear me. And they also say there may be a greater risk of never getting the trade back. And a bit of unfair competition as well. Some countries like Germany, Switzerland, Finland are increasing their peat usage, while the Netherlands is not stopping at all, but changing to a green extraction scheme. Other trade associations, including the National Farmers Union, say things like green waste can be unstable, requiring a lot of work to get the mix right, and of course there are pathogenic and chemical contamination risks with composted green waste material, unless it's from an entirely clean source, which can never be guaranteed. Well, we all know the risk from aminopyralids and clopyralids, don't we? Which I had on 2022 with my tomatoes. Every alternative to peat is also a byproduct of another process, and so it is dependent on that process. The cost of peat-free alternatives, 15 to 20% higher than peat, which in itself is a challenge for the industry. A lot of this stinks a bit of trying to do right, but doing it wrong. Just think of the Dr. Beeching railway cuts back in the 60s. All done with the best intentions, but it achieved absolutely nothing, apart from cause devastation to many seaside resorts and towns, and small communities. Electric vehicles, well, you'll be able to judge more than me whether this works, because I'll be long gone by the time it's fully in. But many have been caught out just this last week with the very cold weather. An EV car's mileage reduced by up to 18%. And while there's enough spare electric in the national grid to supply the chargers, many will not have access to ones in their own home and have to use public ones at a greater cost to themselves. Unless a card scheme's introduced, something like people who can't have a charger, like in a block of flats, they get a card and they can scan the card on a public charger and get domestic rates. But all that's a story for another day. Take care, guys.
Well, there we go. A lot of facts in that little video from Digwell. What I've got to say, thank you, Digwell, for doing that. I'm always careful when it comes to the peat peat-free debate on not so much coming. I went peat-free a while ago. I'll be honest, a couple of years ago anyway. But I don't always buy into all the stuff that we are told. I try and keep an open mind, but research is a bit of a problem, as you can imagine. But way you did well put that across. Fantastic. Thank you so much. That puts that side of a debate across. Should we be using peat? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. I will say that peat was always really, really good in compost, and I don't think anything that we use now is anywhere near as good. Definitely a very good perspective of that debate. Definitely. And, you know, I think we have got to be open to all sides of the debate to really move forward. It's the same as the electric car debate, isn't it? There's a lot of pros and cons on either side, and a few other things that I know of as well. You know, it's just about having a debate openly, honestly, but being able to discuss it honestly. So thank you very much for that. I can see in the comments there was a lot of people who were liking it. So let's go back to a few comments quickly. Rebecca says it's very interesting, and Turbo Stream says brilliant video. Idaho, bravo. Thank you. A massive million thanks. Absolutely fantastic. What have we got? This is a comment I saw. Anna Jones was asking Alison O'Brien. Sorry, Alison, I haven't seen your comments. So if you haven't asked anything, when was I on Radio 2? It was Monday night, Tuesday morning. It was midnight when I was on Radio 2. If you haven't heard it, it will be on the podcast tomorrow. The podcast should also be going on YouTube if you only listened on YouTube too. I've just found out ways of making that possible, shall we say. But yeah, Monday night I was on quizzing the DJ. A lot of fun. This was the thing I've been saying for a few weeks. I've had something on an embargo that I'm not allowed to mention. That was it. Me being on Radio 2 to quiz the DJ OJ Borge, however it's pronounced, on vegetable gardening. A lot of fun. Stuart Jackson says, I may use your video to teach the children the facts. I think it's very important to go and do your own research as well. You know, get all perspective. Kate says, great video. It's good to hear other perspectives. Fantastic. What have we got? Idaho says, the green agenda is big business. I don't disagree with you, but at the same time, we are, as vegetable gardeners, and you're welcome to disagree with me, of course, but as vegetable gardeners, I think it's only right that we want to eat healthier and non-GMO, non-pesticides, non-chemical covered food through our gardening. So are we part of the green agenda? Feel free to disagree with me as much as you like. I just think it's if we're trying to be green ourselves by growing our own food, we're part of that as well. Highgrave Gas says, great video, Digwell. Interesting that they continue to use peat to power some power stations. I do feel the focus is on gardeners is wrong, and I can't get non-peat watering right. So it's the same when it comes to hosepipe bans, I've always said. Why ban gardeners from using the hose pipes when we're probably the most, well, we collect rainwater. We do the most to hold on to rainwater and do the most to stop hosepipe bans compared to those who just use it to fill up a paddling pool. Yet my work van, I can still use a hosepipe to wash my work van when we're in a hosepipe ban. Doesn't seem right to me, does it? It just seems like the gardeners are the ones being forced into it. And I think it's because we are the ones already ahead of the game. Digwell does say, just to reiterate, none of those views were mine. They were all from Pucker sources. So, yeah, I think that's important to say. Everything Digwell said in that video were from sources that he went and found. Not his views, not my views, just sources. David says, I wouldn't worry too much about peat or electric cars. 100 years tops, and the planet will be barren anyway. We'll see. We'll see, won't we? Who knows? Chili Cake says, great video. Digwell brought up some reasons I have not felt the need to rush to peat free. Good enough, good enough. Stefano, is it true the more robust the smell of compost, the better? I would say the best thing is this: when the compost smells sweeter, smells earthy, that's the sign that is the best compost. If it smells off, if it doesn't smell as sweet, if it smells putrid or wrong, then it's not as good. You really want that nice, earthy, sweet smell from your compost. I think that's the best way to describe it. And Digwell has gone and said the same. An earthy smell is good. Yeah. Turbo Stream says, we can only make informed choices with the facts. Lobby groups, the various lobby groups who shout loudest can sway the debate, sometimes not for the greater good. I totally agree. We all need facts in our lives. I don't want to go down the conspiracy route, but we do all need facts to make our own minds up. Yeah. I've read that one. Digwell said, oh no, I've read that one. Sorry, this is the one I haven't read. And that is why peat use is stopping in horticulture. Various lobby groups, yeah. Yeah. What have we got? Ian says, just gone online and Amazon have Levington Lone Peat Compost, £10 for 30 litres. And Turbo Stream will look at that. Fantastic. So let's move away from seed and multi-purpose compost. What other composts do you use? And I touched on this area earlier. Ericaceous compost is one of the things that I do use probably more than any other compost, just purely for my blueberries. I love blueberries, absolutely delicious, but they do need that acidic soil. And I don't know if it's possible to make our own acidic soil. I guess you could just add a few, pine needles or something to multi-purpose compost to make it more acidic. But for me, ericaceous soil is the only compost I buy in for that. Once I've got a blueberry bush or blueberry plant underway, I don't need to buy it again. I do top up quite regularly with pine needles as a mulch to increase the acidity, and of course always water with rainwater to keep the acidity just right for blueberries. It is used in some of the other acid-loving plants as well. I can't think what they are off the top of my head, but certainly blueberries need ericaceous compost. On that note, Gary says, I use whey from cheese making on my blueberries. Whey, is that's obviously the stuff that comes out of it. Is that acidic? Does that work? That's interesting. I've never heard of that. So that's very, very interesting. If anybody does make cheese, of course, use the whey for that. David says, oops. Excuse me, sorry. £10 for 30 litres, he meant. There we go. Yeah, price of compost. I do think the biggest problem with compost is the price of it. And that's why people haven't been going down the peat-free route as much. Toby Stream says, I bought 2 bags of ericaceous compost for my blueberries and an acer tree. That's another one that needs ericaceous compost, of course, the acer tree. Not an edible, so we don't know. David has just come back with a joke. No way. Awesome. That was a good one. That's a good one. One of those jokes I'll go to the wife one day with. Scott says, well-rotted horse manure is what I used as a mulch last year that I bought in bulk, and will hopefully only have to use seed compost this year. Yeah, I mean, there is a risk with well-rotted horse manure that it might still be a bit too rich. It might burn, even when it's rotted down, it might burn some young plants. But it's something to think about, certainly. And then Stuart Jackson goes on and says, bless you for me sneezing. So yeah, ericaceous compost is one that I certainly use for my blueberry plants. Citrus compost as well for my citrus plants, my lemons, my oranges, and things like that. I do quite like citrus. I've got to go and see a citrus nursery that's near me one day soon. I'll make a note of that and arrange that. But citrus for me, again, I don't really know the benefit of using citrus composting for citrus plants. I'm guessing there's something different made up in it, but perhaps you could tell me what is different about citrus compost or cacti compost or orchid compost that makes it more suitable for those. There's even houseplant compost as well. And so what is it about those that makes them so much more suitable? Jenny says, my blueberry is in the ground with a coffee mulch. I sometimes lay my dead fern leaves, but that's it. No special treatment for me, I'm afraid. Just got to be careful. Blueberries are an acid-loving plant. I tend to do all my blueberries in pots for that very reason. As long as you're watering them with rainwater, of course, and it should be fine. But there is a risk. Just check the soil, I guess you could say. But if you're using the coffee mulch, it's probably keeping the acidity low, isn't it? Always get those two the wrong way round. But hey, if it works for you, and of course you could have acidic soil where you are. Digwell says, I thought I used well-rotted horse manure a few years back. Never grew so much grass. Yeah, always a risk. Now, Ian says, orchid compost is mainly bark-based. That does remind me, I've watched, when I used to have a TV, sometimes Monty would come on Gardener's World and sort of say he's mixing in some rotted bracken into his compost and things like that to make up his potting mixes. And grit as well, horticultural grit. Another thing people would add in for drainage. But yeah. Turbo Stream says, I tried some rotted cow manure as a compost mulch. That patch was completely overrun with weeds. There are some horse manures or some animal manures that are better than others for not having weeds. I thought cow manures were quite a good one because they have about 6 stomachs to eat it all up. David says, so how many people here compost weeds and diseased or blighted plants for compost? I do. Not so much diseased. Blighted, probably I do more, but not so much diseased. But I do compost weeds. But I do get my compost bins quite hot so that it kills anything off, in theory. But it's a good question. Greg says, I used some rotted horse manure I got from the garden centre to pot up some fruit trees, $4.99 for 80 litres, but mixed some compost into it. Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. Yeah, I mean, buying rotted horse manure, I see that in garden centres from time to time as well now. Scott says, but it was a good source with good reviews, so I'm okay. Yes, I do think you've got a good source there. I do remember you saying that. I compost my MSIN stuff for veg use, and the weeds or blighted stuff left for 2 years for flowers, etc. I'm trying to get my compost bin so that I've got enough that I can let them rot down for a couple of years, so that that they are going to be good enough. It's difficult to get the compost levels just right when you use compost in such high demand like we do. I compost, chop and drop everything. So chop and drop is where you basically chop everything down where it is and leave it to it. It's a bit of a permaculture method. Ian Bennett, it's far easier to grow on my model railway as I just change the bed for taller ones. Excellent stuff, buddy. Excellent stuff, Ian. Greg says, got a workmate that has 2 horses kept on stables where no weed killer is allowed. We'll be using lots more manure this year as it is free now. That is living a dream here, isn't it? To be able to get free manure on tap. How many of us would love that for our lawns or our gardens? Turbo Stream says, I filled my leaf mould bin this week. I was quite impressed with the results from last year. I think if you can wait a couple of years, then leaf mould would be a great alternative to peat. It's not a bad idea, not a bad thought, actually. Not a bad thought at all. Adding leaf mould to compost mixes as an alternative to peat. I can see that working quite well. Online, you can still get Chempak fertilizer compost base And it says, for making peat compost, I used to get loam, peat and grit or vermiculite. It's better than queer. Fantastic stuff. Now let's go to one of my videos, and you sent me the seed to sow last week for chia seed, something I've never grown before. Let's go see how we get on with sowing this seed.
Right guys, it's a little bit windy outside and the weather is a bit of a mess, so we're going to do the seed sowing for this week indoors. Now this week I am sowing chia. I've had this for a few years. It's a flower shaped chia garden. Says it's for ages 6+, so hopefully we should be okay. Now what we've got here is, this is the growing tray. We're meant to take this plastic bit out, let me just show you, and cut all that so it is ready to go. We're not going to do that, we're just going to be doing the planting. So put the plastic into place. Let's put that to one side so you get a better view of what we're doing. This is what it calls the potting mix. To me, let's show you it a bit closer. It looks like a bit like vermiculite, which is what I think it is. So we just open this packet up. It came with some nice instructions as well, so we know what we're doing. Just a bit of fun really, isn't it? Now what we're meant to do, take this vermiculite and pour it into the outer ring. It's going to take a while, so I'm going to speed this up. There we go. Used that all up. Let's just try and get it a little bit more level by mixing it around. Like so. It's not perfect. So what we do, try shaking it. That might lever it up a bit more. There we go. That's got this vermiculite in. So we actually have got 2 seeds of chia seeds. I don't really want to sow them all. But I reckon we can get 1 pack going. That'll be good. I've never grown chia before. I've seen it in obviously health food shops and places like that. There's another pack inside this. They really have packaged this quite well. I've seen this in health food shops. These are what the seeds look like as well. Let's see if you can focus in on that. I'll try again once I got it out of the packet. You could probably, if you are after chia seeds, go to a health food packet and buy a bag of the chia seeds and sow those. It might actually be cheaper, I've no idea. It's just a bit of an experiment to see how well these grow. Here we go. That's the seeds. Hopefully it's focusing in. A bit difficult for me to see, but it looks like it has. So we just sprinkle these seeds over the top. Try and get them a bit even. There we go. There we go. So there we go. I'm going to just try and get some of these spill bits into the other areas as well. Now, I'm going to give it a bit of a shake again, once again, just to level things out a bit. And we will leave it to grow now. So that is sown and grown. I've never grown chia before, so I've got no idea how long it's going to take. doesn't say anything on the instructions. It just says now we place it somewhere with plenty of light. It comes with this little mister spray as well. We're meant to mist that around. I'm not going to bother with that. I'll just use normal water. I'll let you know how it gets on in the future.
So there we go. That is our chia seeds now sown and hopefully are going to grow. I don't know how it's going to do. I've never grown chia before. I've eaten chia before. It's meant to be a health food, so we'll see how we get on. I did see, and Digwell did mention this last week, my chia microgreens are growing well. Just a trial for the sales. They do taste good though. Are you using them as a microgreen, or are you letting them go to seed to create more seeds for future? I kind of don't know what to do with chia, in all honesty, so it's going to be a bit of an experiment. Right, where were we? So Jenny says, watch out for wormer in manure. Good point, actually. We could, of course, have wormer in our horse manure. We could get worried about a lot of things, couldn't we, if we think about it? Just got to hope for the best, I guess. Scott says, think I'm lucky with my soil. The same place that I got my manure from was selling Fenland soil. But I guess I have that been in the Fenland and find that it does well without having to add much to it. I will get my words out one day. Yeah, you have been lucky. If you've got a good supply of compost, make sure you use it. I used to have a really good supply of horse manure, really well watered, but he packed it up, and it's such a shame, because I could literally grow straight in the horse manure in the beds. It was so well watered. Read that one. Stuart says, what a good idea to dig well about the chia seeds. And Ian says, love your fireplace. We used to sell those when I first started work. Really? Wow. Yeah, I mean, we've got several. We've got 4 of those fireplaces in our house. Hence why we use them quite a bit to keep our house warm and burn all our wood. Right, guys, we've still got a while to go yet, but has anybody got anything they want to add about what composts they buy in? It seems from what I'm gathering with the conversation we are having, many of you will use seed compost and multi-purpose compost, and that seems like all you really want to buy in, which is absolutely understandable and perfect. But if anybody has anything to add, then just hit us up in the comments and let us know. I have sown the chia seeds, which I chose to do last week. I think we said each week I'm going to start choosing the seeds to do and make it a bit easier for you. So what I decided I'm going to sow for next week is celeriac. Celeriac. I love celeriac. Absolutely delicious, otherwise known as celery root. So I'm going to sow that next week for the sow along. So get ready if you are sowing along with us to sow, celeriac. Excuse me, coughing out and splurging all over the place. I do need, one thing I do still want you to set me is a mission, a challenge that I can do next week. And I do want to set you some homework as well. And I have got an idea for some homework that I want to set you. I want to see how you store things in your shed. How do you store things in your shed? Might be a bit of a discussion that we do next week. Ian says, has anyone grown sweet potatoes? I'm going to try this year just to see if it grows. Yes, I've grown sweet potatoes in the past. Haven't done it for a while. The thing with sweet potatoes, to get a decent crop, you do need a really decent summer and lots of moisture in the soil. I would also try and grow the foliage up so that it gets plenty of growth upwards. That seems to work out quite well as well. So yeah, hopefully that will help. Plenty of moisture. Plant need plenty of heat as well. So plant them out in about May time. You can buy slips in. It is possible to grow your own slips, but I've never managed to do it. But yeah, let's see what happens. Jenny says, when we have chickens one day, I have been researching chickens living in the compost area some fantastic results and very happy chickens. Yes, just got to be careful of rats. And if you, like in my case with the neighbours, they get a bit funny about it, but they are definitely very good at going through your compost and really chopping it up. In fact, I've got a few ideas on how I might try and incorporate that a bit more here at home. Graham says, always sow my celeriac the first weekend of February. Yeah, I'm going to do mine next weekend. First weekend, that'll be the weekend after, of course. Reminds me, February the 4th. There will be a live stream, don't worry, it's a Sunday, but of course it is Seedy Sunday in Brighton. I know many of you are not local to Brighton, but if you are going along to Seedy Sunday, I will be there. Let me know if you are going. And of course, there is their own version of Gardener's Question Time. I think it's from 3 to 4 o'clock. You have to buy a ticket in advance. I think it's £3 a ticket, but I am on the panel, so I will be on the stage as such, answering people's gardening questions in that. They've put the guest speakers up. You'll see my photo up on there. You are interested, but you are going to it. Let me know, because it'll be good to sort of meet up with a few people at the same time. For those that don't know what CD Sunday is, it's Britain's oldest and I think it's largest, but it may not be anymore. It's certainly Britain's longest running seed swap. It goes on the first weekend in every February. You can go and swap a load of seeds. You can come back with some great seeds that you've never thought to grow before, and it's a great social event. I often feel that it really starts the season off as well, so I will be going there too. David Williams says, anyone growing Malawan piquant chilies? They're the ones commonly sold as pepper dew in this shape. Love them. I've heard of pepper dew, of course, but I'm not sowing or growing those myself at the moment. That could change. Tesco chia seeds, £1.20 for 150 grams, 3 grams per punnet, sell for £3. 3 gram per punnet, sell for £3. Spring sales coming soon. Yeah, great marketing, isn't it? It just goes to show you can make a fortune. It's same as sesame seed. People have grown sesame seed from sesame seed sold in Tesco. Just goes to show you can make a saving and make a business from it. David says, hoping to get enough of a few pickle jars, talking about the pepper dew chilies. Stuart says, we are sowing peas this week at school as I was off last week with COVID. Hope you're feeling well, buddy. Hope you're feeling better. So a week behind. So with 60 children doing it, hopefully a great harvest to come. Oh, do love a good pea. Each year I want to get better at growing peas. I don't grow enough of them. Scott says, I haven't grown sweet potatoes, but want to try it this year. But honey boat squash are a good alternative. Found they taste similar. There you go. I mean, it is possible to grow sweet potatoes in the UK. You do need a decent sun for it to be worthwhile. I did find the best results I had was with really heavily composted, well-watered manure in the bed that really retained a lot of moisture. Jenny says, sweet potatoes are definite for me. I grow them from my own slips in large pots, up a wire mesh frame full of foliage to climb up. The leaves are edible too. Yes, they are. They're very tasty, actually, as well. Definitely worth growing. If you can have the space, definitely worth growing. I grew them a few years ago now and was really surprised. Ian said, thanks, Richard. I've watched YouTube videos. I'm thinking of growing some in pots in the greenhouse as well as outside in the beds. Do it. Make a video. Share it with us. It'd be good to see. Richard Golden says he's going to CD Sunday. Please do come up and say hello. I'll be trying to keep my eye out for you. I may not recognise you, so please do come to me. And are you coming to the Gardener's Question Time chat as well? You are going. Rob's Allotment Garden. I have tried to grow sweet potatoes 3 times with no success. So my advice, what is happening with your sweet potatoes? Where are they going wrong? Let me know in the comments and I can try and help see what happens. And Jenny sort of says to Rob, can I ask, were they from your own slips or from shop plug plants? For me, I've always bought mine from shop plug plants in, I think, mail order. They came through the post. We potted them up into bigger and bigger pots. They did really, really well, I have to say. Scott says, do sweet potatoes need to be grown in the greenhouse? The idea of the leaves being edible and an ingredient I haven't tried. I grew them outside with absolutely no problems. Obviously, on the south coast, we do get a bit milder. Very, very good plants. They do need a bit of water. I think they would do better in a greenhouse, provided they are kept moist. For me, the hard thing was not harvesting them too soon. What I found, I had to leave my sweet potatoes in the ground until December, when basically the foliage just turned black and withered and died, which was, for me, was December, and that's when we harvested them, and that's when we got a decent harvest. If you did it before the foliage turned black, it was just not worth it. So wait until the foliage turns black and dies back before you harvest them. The first frost is normally a killer. And it was, for me, it was literally like 1 week they were growing absolutely fine. The next week they were dead. And that's when we harvested them. Really, really good. Idaho grows them. They're very beautiful and very prolific. Hot. Oh, talking about the pepperdew, that is, yes. I have completely different ground conditions than you, she goes on to say. I grow them outside in pots. So is that the sweet potatoes or the chilies? Let us know. Thank you, great to hear that. Would sweet potatoes grow on a compost heap? I don't think they necessarily would, in all honesty. Don't think they would. I don't know. I don't think they would. I don't think they would. I think they would be better in pots, if anything. But it'd be an interesting experiment to see if it does work. Not sure. Ian says, I'm trying to grow slips in compost, so pot a potato in a compost and in the kitchen window. Found this method on YouTube. Okay, perhaps it will work then. Tanya has got to go with sleep, being rocked right now. See you all next week and take care. Take care, Tanya. You have a good time. And keep us updated with what you're up to. Rob says, I bought plants from Sutton's. Debbie's put them in my raised bed. That was well fertilized and watered, but just got string out. So you got them from plants. When did you plant them out? Was it after the last risk of frost? And when did you harvest them? When did you harvest them? And that, for me, is quite a key detail. Let us know. Let us know. Jenny says, sweet potatoes also grow well in a second-year bale garden. I grew chilies and sweet potatoes outside. Second-year bale. That could work, couldn't it? That could work. That could work very well. Stuart Jackson says, sweet potato sounds good for school. Would they need covering or should they go in the greenhouse? Thanks, team. They do okay outside, I find, but I think they will be better in the greenhouse, providing the soil is kept moist and the foliage is kept off the ground, braid it upwards. Some people, and I think it was Bob Flowerdew, who sort of said try and keep one stem growing as well, as opposed to having multi-stems. But I didn't find that myself. Planted late May and harvested when the leaves died back, so should have been okay. Did you keep the foliage going upwards or did you let it snake around the place? My next question for that. Jenny says, I found sweet potatoes from Sutton plug plants to be rubbish, much better and stronger from slips at home. I've never managed to get slips from sweet potatoes at home grown. Perhaps, when would you start your slips off, Jenny? When would you start making your slips? Let us know. Online, you plant out in mid-May, but you can leave them in until after the first frosts, as the frost only gets the leaves. Just let them grow on their own, Rob says. Yes, so try and get them growing upwards. Try and get them growing upwards, and you probably end up with a much stronger sweet potatoes. Right, I have got your photos as well. Just remembered. Let's have a look and see what is going on here. So Jenny, talking of Jenny, this is her new allotment. As you can see, a lot of work going on, a lot of work to do as well. But we're looking forward to hearing how you get on, Jenny. I keep meaning to message you to find out a few things. Looking forward to hearing, seeing, etc., etc. Scott's shared this photo of chicken and squash tray bake. If you want the recipe, it's actually on the website and will be on the podcast tomorrow as well. Absolutely delicious. This is something I'm going to be trying this week too. We've got plenty of chicken and we've got some squash that need using up. So looking forward to trying this out and seeing how we get on. Now, Andy has been making progress on his allotment. You may remember his allotment was completely covered in carpet, and this is what we have cleared. He's done well. He's done very well, I've got to say. It's starting to look like there's a lot of potential in his plot. Looking forward to seeing how we get on in the future as well. Now, Ian Beddoes, of course, comes up with his joke, and this is his eggplant. It's not quite what he expected. A bit like the poached eggplant, I think they look like, but fried eggplant, I guess you could call them. Good laugh nonetheless. So that is it. Please do keep posting those photos. We absolutely love seeing them. We always do, and it always does make quite a good conversation in the Facebook group as well. You can post them in our Facebook group. You can send them to me via social media if you're not on Facebook, or you can email me, richard@thevegegardenpodcast.co.uk. Please do keep sending those photos in. We absolutely love seeing them. And I think it gives a lot of us a lot of inspiration of things to do in the future as well. Jenny says, starting my slips soon. I'll add some photos. So perhaps that could be a mission one week to see if I can get my own slips to start. Just an idea. But as I said, I do need a mission. We're coming to the last 7 minutes of tonight's show. I do need a mission for next week. I'm thinking for the subject for next week, I want to talk about garden shed storage, how you set things up in your shed for storage. As I said, that's your homework. I want to see how you store things in your shed. Do you have things set up as your homework for the week? But what do you think? Let me know. Or what about the subject for next week, shed storage? Digwell says, sweet potatoes did not grow for me, but looking at Jenny's advice, I may give them a go in 2025 as I have a load of second-year bales. I'm thinking of giving it a go. Looking forward to that, Digwell. Excellent. And Jenny says, mission, start your slips. I'll DM you photos of how I do it. That if everyone's on board with that for a challenge or a mission for this next week, start my sweet potato slips, then I am all on board for it. As I said, Celeriac is going to be the sow along next week that we're going to sow, and we're going to be talking about shed storage and things like that. Ian says, how do you light your fires, and show us what you do with the ash, etc. It's a good idea. The trouble is, Amanda tends to light the fires and she clears away the ash. So I do nothing is all my answer to that. I'm probably going to get told off with that because she's literally just next door. Stuart says, I have turned the corner now, tested negative. So if anyone else gets COVID, remember I wash this variant its eyes. Much better today, thanks all. Glad to hear you are feeling better. Ian says, great show tonight. Thanks for the info on sweet potatoes. Your mission for this week is to show how your allotment survived the storm. Oh, good one. That's a very good one at all. Slip mission sounds good. I have no idea how that's done. No fires here, said Bigwell. I think the slips mission is going to be a good one. If it's the right time to do that, we can do it. And I think she's just seen. Oh, CD Sunday have messaged me. What else have we got? Top-down lighting on my wood burner works a treat. Excellent stuff. Do you use shop bought sweet potatoes, Jenny, or to get your slips? Do you use shop bought sweet potatoes? Good question. I hope so. I certainly hope so. How do you know what varieties they are as well? Got a multitude of questions coming out on that. But yeah, nonetheless. Jenny says, I use my own, yes, but you can make sure they are organic. Non-organic are sprayed with anti-shooting chemicals. Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so we're going to be doing that for a mission, starting off some sweet potato slips. We're going to be sowing celeriac and discussing shed storage ideas. As if that's okay with you guys for the subject for next week. The plan for next week is to move one of my sheds, so maybe even two now. I've given it some thought in here, but that's all to appear next week. Yeah, so good luck, as Stuart says, good luck with the storms. Hopefully we are not going to get any damage. Please, if you do get some damage, as bad as it is, I know, please do feel free to share your photos of the damage and what have you. We don't want to glorify the bad luck stuff, but we just kind of intrigued with how it goes on and see if we can help as well. Right. What is everybody saying? People are starting to pack up. We've still got a couple of minutes to go. Has everyone battened up and ready for this this weekend, this bad storm Aisha that is coming through? I certainly went around today making sure everything was tight and secure and seeing how we get on. Hopefully we're going to get no damage. Although that's why I'm in here, because I did worry that the damage was going to be pretty bad. I don't know if anybody else has felt that the picture quality has been pretty damn good tonight. It feels like we are actually properly live streaming. We seem to have really coped quite well tonight with signal qualities and things like that. And this is making me think that perhaps I need to go back and rebuild the shed studio in here. If it works better for the show, it could possibly work. It's just building the shed studio once again, something I will need to do. Yeah. Quickly, Turbo Stream says, if I get damage, I get damage. Not much I can do about it. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you. Stuart says, the picture and sound was great tonight. Picture great. Excellent. Excellent. So it did work. It did work. It's getting windy now in Hampshire, and Hargrave Gas says, I've ordered some of those pepper seeds now. Thanks for that, and thanks Richard and everyone for a great chat with much better picture quality. It works, doesn't it? This goes to show it is just down to those signal issues. David, sorry, it's nice to join the live chat for a change. Cheers, Rich and all. Gary says, if the worst happens, hopefully we can build back stronger. Quality has been great. Fantastic. Greg says, what hens are you getting next, Richard? I think you mentioned getting some more a couple of weeks back. I'm not sure what hens I'm going to get just yet. I want some interesting ones, some that maybe lay blue eggs, just for a bit of a change. Digger says, TTFN, guys, go greenhouse strapped up, ready. It has lasted the last 10. And well done, everyone. See you all next week. And Digger says, click like. Yes, don't forget to click the like button on your way out. Don't forget to follow. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to click the notifications so that you know when we go live. It is 7:30. It is time to get off this show. I go and do our nightly things before we return back to work. We will be back again next Sunday at 6, whether I'm in here or in the outdoor shed. Don't know yet. But a lot to think about. Right, guys, you take care. I will speak to you again next time.